Hello. Welcome, everyone. So excited to see you all joining us today and coming to this wonderful webinar. We're going to give everyone a few minutes to join. So we'll begin in a couple of minutes. And in the meantime, if you could, in the chat, tell us where you join us from today. Give us a city or state. And, we're expecting people from all across the country. So we'd love to see where people are tuning in today. All right, I'm seeing Jason from Chicago, Jennifer from Massachusetts. Hello, welcome. Chicago, Nicole, hello. Amanda from Fort Myers, welcome. I want to be there. I'm in Minnesota, so our weather's probably a little different. New York City, hello. All right, we've got some friends from Houston. Very excited. If you're just joining us, we're waiting a couple of minutes for everyone to join us, and we are just curious where people are tuning in from today. So if you can throw it in the chat as you see people doing, love to see where you're from. A couple more from Chicago. I see Connecticut represented. Welcome. Excellent. So I see people are still trickling in, and we're so excited you could all join us today. So thank you very much. Just another moment or two, and we'll get started with some of the content that you are all tuning in here to see, and we're excited to share with you today. Raymond, welcome from Louisiana. Happy to have you on today. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. And, we're excited to again, welcome you today to our webinar about how to discover district level post-secondary solutions. If you just logged in, my name is Jeron Schmidt. I am OneGoal Senior Director of Partnerships and Growth. And before we dive in, we'd love to really get a sense of who is joining us today. So we're going to launch a quick poll just to learn more about you and the other members of the audience. So when the poll comes up, please answer the question of how are you connected to OneGoal? Tell us more of your connection to our organization and the work that we do. Excellent. All right. So excited to have so many people with different connections to us here today. And really excited to be welcoming you to this webinar. Before we get started, I'm sure after a few years of Zoom really being a primary way of communicating, we all have some basic Zoom etiquette down, but just as a friendly reminder, if you have questions today, you can either share them in the chat or via the Q&A feature, and we'll try to answer those as we go along. And if we don't get to your question, we'll definitely do our best to weave it into the discussion at the end. We are recording today's webinar, and so anyone that has registered will receive the recording. And we'll definitely be sharing some links in the chat as we go along, so you can dig into content at your own time and really get more in depth than time may allow for us today. So we're really excited to dig into this today. So I am super lucky. Not only do I get to open today's webinar and host you all today, but I'm not alone. I've got some fantastic guests and friends with me today. Joining us today will be Chad Luhman, who's the head principal from one of our partner districts in Kentucky, Danville Independent Schools. Also is Shelby Cameron, secondary instructional specialist from Danville Independent Schools. And one of our colleagues here, Kayla, Ritter, Rickels, a post-secondary leadership coach here at OneGoal. So today is all about building partnerships and how those partnerships can support post-secondary readiness across schools and districts. And for me personally, this is a huge pleasure to host this space. I've worked in this college post-secondary transition phase for about 15 years, first in college admissions for a long time, and then with some other college access and success nonprofits. And so throughout that time, I've just really been investing more time and effort in making an impact on this transition point in young people's lives. And so I'm really excited to be working alongside wonderful district and school leaders like Shelby and Chad, and really excited to be getting started here today. So before we get to the conversation, we give a brief overview of our organization for those of you who are new to OneGoal and have just joined us for the first time today. So our mission here at OneGoal is to close the degree divide in America. We absolutely know that students from low and high income communities aspire to complete their post-secondary education at similar rates. And we also know that students from low income communities, the majority of whom are students of color, face enormous systemic barriers to earn their degrees. And unfortunately, that injustice has been made worse by the pandemic, and we're still seeing lingering effects from that. So as a result, hundreds of thousands of young people transition to adulthood without the skills, experience, or credentials needed to build careers and the lives of their own choosing. Only 22% of students from low-income communities earn a post-secondary degree, whether it's a bachelor's degree or associate's degree, compared to 67% of their peers from a high-income area. Our vision is that every young person will have an equitable opportunity to achieve their greatest post-secondary aspiration. Hard stop. That's exactly what we want to do. So how we're doing that in this year, we will reach about 15,000 students nationwide through our classroom model in 6 different areas, which you can see on the map here. And then we'll also reach students via our post-secondary leadership network, which is currently in the states of Illinois and Kentucky. You can learn more about OneGoal and where we're currently operating by visiting the link in the chat that will come up soon. But how we do this, you heard me mention the classroom model and the post-secondary leadership network. We offer a set of services aligned with a core belief that in order to meaningfully change post-secondary outcomes, we must pursue a 2-track strategy. First, we need to build the capacity and the knowledge of adults in the system beyond just teachers and counselors. And we have to deliver content and curriculum directly to students so they can aspire to their greatest post-secondary aspiration. So just like math and English are taught to students, we strongly believe that post-secondary planning must be explicitly taught to students, and teachers and staff must be coached how to effectively deliver that knowledge. And so those are the 2 ways that we're doing this. And today, we're going to talk about the importance of district-level post-secondary vision setting. When districts build a shared vision for post-secondary support, that permeates the entire district. Administrators, school leaders, teachers, community members, students, and beyond. And when that happens, that's when real impact happens and more students are successful. Before we hear from our friends at Danville, we're going to launch another quick poll. Please take a moment to access the poll and share with us why you think district-level vision setting is so critical. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This is really interesting, and it's great to see the responses come through, and thank you for taking a moment to fill it out. It's great to see what we're all bringing to the conversation, the experiences and the lens that we're joining today. If you answered A through D, you're absolutely correct. It's all of the above. These are all reasons why district level post-secondary investment is important, and these are reasons why great partners of OneGoal, like Danville Independent Schools, are really taking this work forward. So we're going to see this in action. We are going to really take a look and see where the critical work is being done, which is in districts, in the classrooms, through one-on-one conversations with districts and teachers and educators are having with students every day. So please help me welcome Chad and Shelby to share more about Danville Independent Schools and their experience so far.
Hello, we are so excited to be here today to talk about Danville High School. Both of us are administrators at Danville High School currently, and so just a little bit of overview about the Danville Independent Schools. We are a really small district with just one high school. Our middle school feeds directly into our high school, so we have the ability to start seeing the population of students that we'll have pretty early in their educational journey. Our educational disadvantage population is at 67%. So a lot of our students don't have the same sort of resources that you typically see with those higher end students. And so we constantly strive to achieve some sort of equity between those two populations. And our diverse population is something that we're very proud of. And so unfortunately, it is not currently represented within our college level or career courses. And so one of our major goals with OneGoal was making sure that we try to strive to make that diverse population represented within those college and career classes as well. We want them to have the same sort of opportunity when it comes to our post-secondary courses that the rest of our population does.
Yeah, we're very new in the district. Shelby and I, Shelby's been here a little longer. This is my second year. But coming into it, taking account of the different opportunities that Danville offers, we can personalize education much better for our smaller district, for our students, because we get to know them on an individual level. And we started to recognize really quickly that a lot of our underrepresented and marginalized students, we're not thinking about college. We're not exposed to the opportunities of post-secondary that they could get from the resources that we have in Danville. We wanted to partner with our community college and our vocational schools, as well as trying to find a way to provide this opportunity. So in this small district, we do have a lot of needs and we do have a wealth of diversity, and we want to find each individual niche for each of our students so that we can help them become successful. One of the things that you see here is our correlation with the state goal. Kentucky Post-Secondary Education or Post-Secondary Council has a goal of 60% of the population have a credential or degree by 2030. And so in that, we wanted to try to push that agenda with our students and make sure that we start them on the right path to be a part of this goal. When we went to the community, talked to the Economic Diversity Workforce Development Committee, and with our community leaders, they wanted us to utilize BCTC, which is our community college they just invested a lot of resources in our Bull County area. And we were more than happy to try to find a way to do that. And so we worked really closely with them to find ways to schedule and to design different pathways for our students that may not be looking for a four-year degree, but may be looking for a credential or a certification that will make them more, attractive to employers and to help support our community. This is what you see in Kentucky. We have our 8 public universities. We partner with the University of Kentucky for our dual enrollment as well. They stream a professor into our classrooms with the content expert beside them. So we thought this was an environment that would really set our students up for success. One of the barriers that we have is the academic preparedness. Some of our students did not have the 2.5 that's required to be a part of this. So that's the other side of trying to find a way to, in the early years, making sure that we're ramping up and preparing our students either with GPA, but also with mastering the content that they have in front of them so that they can be a part of this. We find alternative ways when they're not successful in the classroom. And those parts are where we are able to kind of partner with local vocational schools and trying to ramp up and grow their academic preparedness.
So some of the ways that our students are able to achieve college and career readiness is through a variety of 5 different options here. And so you'll notice that 3 of them really are college-based, 2 of them are career-based. One of them is still in the process of being approved, and so we're waiting to hear exactly what that internship would look like. And so we are currently very focused on making sure that all of our students are at that college and career readiness, one of those measurements that makes them more like Mr. Luhman said, more marketable in that job and career field. And so really we're looking forward to giving our students a authentic opportunity to get these benchmarks. And so with that dual credit course, they are with that professor. And so then they're also having scaffolded instruction from the classroom content teachers to help their success in that class, to make that transition to college just a little bit easier. In a lot of these situations, what we're noticing is that students will say, I didn't think this was possible for me. And then I started doing it with, my teachers. And so they see that it is totally possible for them to go to college and to be able to do that. So for us to be able to get there, as Mr. Luhman said, we have a lot of needs in the small district. And so we really wanted to expand and restructure those student supports that we have at our school for those college courses and career courses, making sure that everybody that is on our team has a input and a influence on that system. The more people, the better. We also are specifically focused on our local business partnerships and the opportunities in front of us. Our community wants to support us and we want to support the community. And so those partnerships just grow. OneGoal has really helped us connect and be strategic with the way that we do those partnerships to make sure that they are, good for both parties and that, we're getting what we can out of it. And then also just a very clear mission that involves all of our staff about what this vision means. And so if you ask any of our staff, they're going to tell you that we're on 100% college and career readiness, and we're going to 100% graduation rate, and we're not going to leave any of our students behind. And so that has been a very common goal between all of us. And it's been really good for our school to have that very clear vision.
Yeah, when Sylvie talks about that 100%, I just want to touch on that really quickly. This year, it was at the end of last year when we started our scheduling at the high school, and we committed to every junior and senior, I guess, experiencing a dual enrollment class. This was a huge shift. Danville had been a strong community of commitment towards the AP and using AP as advanced placement for our kids to challenge our kids. But we said, hey, we're not just going to stop with AP for our high performing kids. We want all of our kids to get that dual enrollment experience. And so what you'll see in some of the data that we've accumulated that we're really proud about is in a short time, one semester, we more than tripled the number of students that were passing a dual credit class. So the students that were going to BCTC last year, that we had 10 of them. In one semester, we had 34 pass a BCTC just last semester. Last year, we only had 13 students pass a dual credit class. And just in the one semester, we had 107 students pass a dual credit class. So our commitment has yielded high results really quickly. And so we're so happy about this. And as she was saying, the college and career readiness is a requirement of our state, but that's not something that just limits us as a high school. We want to find those other avenues to make sure that they're getting that readiness, and we're demonstrating that we're meeting those benchmarks. When we meet with community members, we ask for, there's resources that we need. We need those financial supports. We're starting to get that for all of our students that may have or may not have been excluded just because they couldn't pay for it previously. But we're also looking for internships. We're looking for that authentic experience, and we're starting to find more commitment from our community for those internships that I think previously I just hadn't been thought of.
So we got a question in the Q&A section, if we can go ahead and answer that. So they asked who was paying for our dual enrollment classes currently. So there's a work ready scholarship that gives all of our students the opportunity to take 6 hours every school year. So at bare minimum, we do have that covered from the school and through the state. We also are looking for other grants and partnerships that we're able to fund those. Our big goal here is that our financial limitations won't be a barrier for our students. And so that was another reason why our community partnerships are so important, is because they do fund some of those courses, especially when it means that we are developing workers that could potentially be back in their factories and their other opportunities. So we are constantly looking for other financial support opportunities.
And yeah, you all can imagine with the high rate of free and reduced lunch students that we have, fee waivers are something that we honor in this area. So we want to make sure that we provide those opportunities. And our goal ultimately is to have students that will graduate with associate's degrees. With that taking place, we're going to kind of go beyond what the Work Ready Scholarship or the state supported scholarships, and we're going to have to find ways to do that. And so the contributions from grants and and from our community, we've had churches donate to us. Right now, like I said, we're working really closely with our local government. I just met with the mayor just yesterday to talk about what we can do and what we can't do as far as financial supporting. We also have there's a endowment that supports our community, and so we're reaching out and writing grants and trying to get that support. Our support student network, as we're starting to move into that, we want to allow for our students to experience this and communicate and collaborate with others. The part that really enticed us about the UK dual credit, the University of Kentucky dual credit, was the fact that they would be in the classroom 5 days a week with a content expert. And so how do we offer the opportunity to grow those soft skills and skills that for first generation college students, they don't come as easy. They don't see that from other family members or other extended family members, and understanding the different steps and the different requirements it's going to take for you to connect when you step onto that college campus. We want to make sure that we retain our students, that our students that go to college are retained in college, and then that they are working towards completion. And what are those small increments that they have to do? Do they have to reach out to their professor? When are they meeting with their mentor? How are they working with their advisor? Those things are, and time management are all things that we want to make sure that we're offering our students during those downtimes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We review data weekly. So OneGoal has offered just a different lens, an outside lens. I always hear when you talk about school leadership, the 50,000-foot view. Well, OneGoal's Kayla has really provided us a 100,000-foot view. What does it look like from way up above? What resources could we utilize? What types of data should we be collecting, and that have research grounded structures that say, hey, when you look at ninth grade readiness, this is a great indicator of how well your students will do in your dual enrollment opportunities. And so we are grateful for the types of data that we are starting to see that matter. That is something, though, in our early tenure here at Danville, we have really grounded ourselves, and Shelby is excellent at this. So, and it's her kind of wheelhouse right now, where she's developed and designed different data supports that we meet about and talk about weekly. So Shelby, if you want to talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so when I manage data, I do my best to collect data from all demographics, also obviously student success data. We're looking at perception data, so what it means, what our community thinks about us, what they think we're doing, and things along those lines that really helps drive our communication schedule and our communication plan. And then beyond that, what OneGoal has really offered us is a different sources of data. And so looking into what happens in that post-secondary situation, which has been absolutely meaningful. Yes, Kentucky Stats was awesome, and we found a lot of really useful data there as well. And so we kind of opened up that to look past what our students are doing just within our little confines of our high school. And so it's been really beneficial for us to see just like what they've done, where they're going, and that sort of thing, and see any trends that have been successful. And so we're looking at which of our pathways have been the most successful, which tests or which classes require more supports, and then building that into our schedule so that we have those opportunities. Essentially, we're really focused on what the students are learning and how successful they are, and not necessarily so much on the current structures that we have in place, but building them into be more of what our students are, more student success. When we look at a dual credit course, we're looking for 100% when it comes to achievement level there. And so achievement level with the dual credit course typically means a C or higher, so that it would transfer, or it would be something they could then go into a deeper content on. And so If that's not the case, though, you're meeting with those.
Yeah, and you know, we are in a state of continuous improvement. You know, we like to say in our meetings, you know, that the old adage that we don't let good get in the way of great. So as we start to look at the data that we collect, we're making sure we're sharing that out with our stakeholders, starting with our instructors, starting with our school leadership team, helping them find trends and identify either problems of practice or pockets of greatness. And so that we can either replicate and emulate what we see in the great pockets. And then when we find that the difficulties or the challenges that we're facing, how do we start to identify the problem of practice? And then what are our steps to help support that? One of the challenges that we face, again, I think I said it earlier, was the unprepared academic students that have, you know, deficits coming out of the pandemic. I mean, you know, as we return to school and as we return to how we do school, we want to locate those areas of deficits that we can make sure that we are supporting and growing so that they are on the best path to do what they want to do and find their passion and cultivate their potential into what we do with post-secondary readiness. The other part that OneGoal really kind of identified for us was, hey, let's be systemic in the ways that we record and we collect all the different parts that go into your success at Danville High School. And one of that is the inventory of local supports and partnerships and finding out who we partner with, how valuable they are, and what can we do to encourage more partners, or what can we do to strengthen that relationship with the partnerships that we already have. Many times in a school, and you all know, you're going 100 miles a minute. You're really focused on and driven on what that goal is and that strategic plan is for that school year. And so OneGoal has allowed us to develop those structures and build in those supports to say, hey, let's record this so we can reflect upon this at a later time and utilize the journey, utilize the data from the journey to support how we're going to improve in the future.
So as the OneGoal coach serving Danville and just OneGoal in general, when we think about the Post-Secondary Leadership Network, we really start this work with our post-secondary rubric. And if you are in education and you've been in education for a while, you know that there are rubrics for everything. But what we found at OneGoal is that there wasn't actually a strong rubric for PK-12 school districts to think about how they are developing post-secondary readiness and success for their districts and for their students. And so we start these partnerships by doing a rubric assessment. And this is across 7 different key focus areas. 2 that we consider foundational: shared vision, plan, and framework, and post-secondary data systems and structures. And 5 areas that we consider secondary or build upon that foundation: continuous improvement cycles, adult capacity building, partnerships, student supports and advising, and aligned human and financial capital. And we really see these 7 areas as the key places, the key levers that districts and schools within the districts need to be able to pull on, measure, and understand to be able to drive success. So when we did this with Danville, we had a really wonderful conversation about what this looks like and how to prioritize the areas we focus on. And so for this current academic year, there were 2 areas that we settled on. One was really working on defining, codifying, and communicating the shared post-secondary vision, plan, and framework. So you heard from Danville that they are really clear. Every student graduates and every student is post-secondary ready. Every junior and senior has access to dual credit. Those are fabulous plans that have to be disseminated within the community, across the district, across teachers, and more. And so we've really been thinking about how do we refine that? How do we communicate that? How do we move forward with that piece in particular? The second area we've really focused on is student supports and advising programming. And this is really with that student first lens. So how do we think about students above all other things, students above all adult problems, so that we can really center their experience, center their success in the ways that they define it, and make sure that they have a post-secondary plan? If I pulled the veil back just a little bit, I would tell you that next academic year, we really expect to move towards adult capacity building and aligned human and financial capital, knowing that those are critical areas to think about in terms of where we're headed, where we're going, and how we build this to be sustainable. And so this is something we ask every single district to think about. How do you prioritize across these? What are the areas you're doing really well on? Knowing that, frankly and truthfully, all of these 7 of these areas are intersectional and connect. So it's impossible to do vision and plan without data. It's impossible to think about student supports without a little bit of adult capacity building. And so really making sure that we're building this vision. And we just want you to know that this is really part of the strategy of OneGoal when we work with districts, is starting here with a similar and codified rubric, so we can then develop these personalized plans, these individualized plans for your districts and schools, so you can meet the goals around post-secondary readiness and success that you really want, and work in collaboration through that coaching and assistance those years that we work together.
Chad and Shelby, thank you so much for telling us about your experiences so far, some of the challenges that you face. I'm sure many of the people attending today are also experiencing in their communities, but then also how you overcame those and how you are really working towards some more equitable outcomes for all your students. And so thank you very much for diving into that. We're going to transition a little bit into some audience questions. And so at this time, for those of you who are joining us today, please use the Q&A feature, put some questions in there. They can be questions specifically for our friends from Danville about Kayla and the work as the post-secondary leadership coach, for me about OneGoal in general. And so give you a few minutes to do that, think about it, really reflect on what you've heard so far. I'd like to dive in and just offer a few questions to get things rolling here a little bit while people are thinking about their questions here. So for both Shelby and Chad, I'm really curious, what areas of focus do you think have had the biggest impact on students' post-secondary readiness to date? And where do you see that going?
I'm going to say scheduling. I'm going to say, hey, we found a way to fit this into our schedule. The dual enrollment, we partnered with, I got to say we partnered with our Department of Transportation so that kids would be bused back and forth to the campus, to the BCTC campus, but also making sure that we had that available time at the beginning of the day. And so we reorganized kind of how we do our morning sessions and how our start looks so that we could fit right into what the University of Kentucky offered for their dual enrollment and also what BCTC offered. So if with that scheduling part was the most important. I think we were a little aggressive in saying, hey, every junior and senior. So when we say that, we had to offer that scheduling component so that they could do that.
Yeah, and I'm going to piggyback right off that and say student advising, because it was really important that we got the communication out with all the opportunities that are available to our students and the different ways that it would work. The BCTC classes and the UK classes are structured a little differently, so it's important that students understand the experience that they have when they go into those courses. And then also, some of our courses are very career-centered, which means they're like going to a welding lab and they're actually learning how to weld. And so some of our students want those like hands-on experiences. And so we want to make sure that they understand that they are doing these things. They're getting this real-world experience, learning these skills. And so, our students are just so proud of the skills that they're developing. We've got some of our welders will come back and show videos of them doing their welding because they're just so proud of everything that's happening. So that student advising piece has been really key.
I absolutely love that. And I just want to make sure that you all hear some of the love you got in the chat here about your student-centered lens at a systems level. That's why we're all here and why we do the work that we do, right? Is for students. And so I know, especially as educators, it's sometimes a thankless job. So I want to specifically call that out for you today, Chad and Shelby, and just say thank you. That's awesome. And we need more people like you doing this work across the country on behalf of students. So just wanted to mention that. And I'm really curious as well, there's a little bit of a question about like academic readiness and that being an issue. How is your district thinking about changing teaching and learning to ensure that all students are academically ready?
It's a great question. That is exactly kind of where we've been led into. So you see Kayla smiling. She's heard me on this soapbox a little bit. We're moving towards a mastery-based learning or teaching and learning style. And so we want to shift not totally into standards-based, but more of a mastery-based to where our students are demonstrating mastery on the standards that their teachers have put in front of them. We want to become more clinical. And I don't mean to take away from the other parts, because the soft skills are important, but we don't want to measure. You were able to get your syllabus signed by your parents and we gave you 100 points for that in bringing that in. We need to know what you know academically and associate it with those Kentucky standards. Now, that being said, I inherited a school that was already transitioning into that, and I'm so proud of the work that they've done. We have year-long grading. So you're never out of the game. If you have a poor grade or a lower grade first semester or first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, there's always a chance for you to make up the work or catch up on what you want to demonstrate mastery of. And we know a lot of times learning is not about timing. We don't need, you don't need to know all the material in that first semester. If you do, we probably need to be responsive to that data and move you into a more challenging academic environment. And if you don't, we need to be responsive to that and identify the gaps that you have and be responsive in a way that we intervene and provide you the supports to help scaffold what you need to know so that you are performing at that 9th grade level when you're finally finished with 9th grade and you're ready to perform at that 10th grade level. Grading in that way and we believe becoming more clinical in the grading will allow us to have that 2.5, that 3.0 that will allow you to be in those rigorous dual credit classes. And if you're not there yet, and I keep saying yet because we use the growth mindset, we're going to continue to work with you and get you to that point where you will be able to experience that. Experiencing a college class in high school and experiencing a dual enrollment connection in high school, we believe sets you up for future success because you may not otherwise get that. Even if it's at BCTC and you want to go into a vocational area, I thought about this scenario yesterday when I was talking with our city government. If you went and got your welding license and then all of a sudden about 25, 26, much like many of our friends when they were in college, you change your major or you decide you don't want to do that job anymore, you still have that efficacy, that sense of efficacy that you can accomplish this because you did the welding degree. Hey, let me go back to BCTC and get my HVAC degree, or let me get my carpentry, let me get my auto mechanics, whatever, nursing, whatever it is that you want to do and you decide to transition into. By experiencing that in high school with the supports that we offer, we believe will build you up for success and a sense of efficacy in your life.
Amazing. Thank you, Chad. Kayla, I'm going to put you on the hot seat now. We had a question come in for you, and one of our guests today is curious how your focus as a leadership coach has varied across the districts and the schools that you work with. I know because I work with you that you're heavily invested not just with Danville but the other districts that you support too. So, in other words, how do you customize your coaching for the different needs of the districts that you're working with?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So I have the pleasure of working with 6 districts across the state of Kentucky in the OneGoal work. And my hope is that every single district feels like they are getting individualized personal care and attention from me that really suits and meets them where they are at with their goals. I would say my strategy as a coach generally is, one, clearly leveraging the rubric to say, how do you perceive that you all are doing? But then really asking and using data outside of that to triangulate it. How can we talk to teachers? How can we talk to students? How can we use KY Stats, which is the data system that has been mentioned in the chat, to really say, here's how you believe you're performing. Here's how other forms of data, both qualitative and quantitative, show up. So we can develop this plan together. None of this is cookie cutter with my districts. We might be moving through similar conversations and we're looking at similar sets of data, but we're centering it in the improvement plans that the schools have for themselves and the realities that the schools have in terms of their teaching force, their students, their economic situation, and the diversity of schools. I'm working with rural districts, suburban districts, larger districts. And so really making sure that we're able to flex this model so it serves and meets everyone is really important. If you want to learn a little bit more about a large urban school, there's an Elgin case study. We'll make sure we drop into the chat, and that will cover a little bit more around what this work looks like in a large urban district with multiple sites and spaces. But I think it's really important to align this work to state accountability metrics, national best practices, and school-based and district-based improvement plans. We know that the work of K-12 is ultimately creating a lifelong learner and citizen. And post-secondary work aligns to that in every single level of school. We just so often focus it on high school. So thinking about how we engage the other stakeholders, how we engage the district and across the district schools has been really important, but centering it in how they view the work and the capacity they have has really made it to be flexible and individualized.
Thank you, Kayla. I really appreciate that perspective of how you work with so many different types of districts and really bring forward their unique district and community priorities. And that actually leads into another question for you, Chad and Shelby. Like, there are a lot of stakeholders in this education space, and specifically when we're looking at post-secondary outcomes. So like, how do you manage all the accountability and goals, whether it's for your specific community, your city government, all the way up to state district levels? Like, how do you manage those different layers? Like, what's your trick?
I'll go first and I'll let Shelby jump in because I couldn't do what I do without Shelby. Shelby is always the one that's prioritizing and making sure that we do lists. And so if I was to turn around and show you, I have a whiteboard in my office and we rank where we are. We try to stay focused. And the challenge with that is staying true to our core values and what our initial goal was. Last summer, we hired a group to come in and really ground us in the perspective of where Danville's been and where we believe Danville's going. And then we had to identify 4 major areas that if we focused our resources on and we really grounded our work in these areas, we would make Danville the best Danville it could possibly be. And so those areas were student advocacy, coaching and feedback, influencing executive functioning. And then the last one, help me out here, Shelby, it is
coaching and feedback.
Coaching and feedback, yes. And so as we go through those, we really try to make sure that we're meeting the state initiatives. We're trying to meet, like you said, our local stakeholders initiatives. And all that kind of fits in there. So as we start to talk about dual enrollment, we say, hey, that's influencing our executive functioning. Let's make sure that we're still on that path and that everyone knows how we're going to get to that. Hey, we want to give students choice. We want to give them an opportunity to find what their passions are and, cultivate that potential that they have within them. So let's make sure when we give them a voice, we put them in the right avenues to be successful. And so balancing and juggling all that has really been a lot easier this year because of the work we did in the summer to ground ourselves in those priorities and try to stay as focused as we can on those. While we stay focused and while we drive through this dual enrollment journey that we're on, we get a lot of different, hey, what are we going to do about this? What about the social emotional side? What about the whole child? How are we going to make sure that we can provide those opportunities? And we make sure we build those in under the understanding that we're still moving for those focusing for.
Great. And I just would like to highlight a question that David put in the chat about tracking students. Does the state pull clearinghouse data for you from the National Student Clearinghouse? Or how do you track graduates who attend out-of-state colleges?
That's a great question, Kayla.
I was going to say, do you all want me to take that?
You got that one.
We've been working on alumni outcomes and really understanding where students go and what's happening. Kentucky Stats, we're really lucky in the state of Kentucky to have such a robust data system and data analytics system in Kentucky Stats. And we, within that tracks at aggregate level where students are going and what that looks like. In addition to that, at OneGoal, we support some National Student Clearinghouse work to really understand if students are going in-state or out of state. Then we look at that data to say, like, what is our role and how do we operationalize this? For the most part, for Danville in particular, their data and their students show that students stay in-state. And so we've really heavily focused on what is that experience and how do we ensure students get the opportunity that they want and need as it relates to matriculation of credit, and matriculation just of the student into programs in general. But that does not mean we don't look at and pay attention to out-of-state students. It's just a balance of how we prioritize and think about how we develop partnerships and student readiness so that they feel prepared for whatever transition is about to come.
Thank you, Kayla. Earlier, Shelby, I believe it was you that was, mentioning like you really want to focus in on all of your populations of students and ensure that they are all achieving success. So how are you ensuring that they're having equitable outcomes amongst all your populations? Like, what are the steps that you're taking to ensure that?
So on a large scale, we're looking at the makeups of our dual credit and career-based classes, all those dual enrollment opportunities. And so, and then digging deeper into what those look like. And so in a broad scale, looking at that, but then individually, when we're talking about student data, we really do talk about individual students. And so we have different like flags and things like that we have for students, knowing like this kid doesn't have a 2.5, so we need to make sure that they're having academic counseling to ensure they have that 2.5 by the time they're going to be enrolled in those dual credit courses and things along those lines. And so we're being very specific with our targeted population. When we talk about like seniors, we're talking about individual students. We know the student is enrolled in the marketing pathway. We need to ensure that they have the success to have to pass that marketing EOP exam and things along those lines. And so it breaks down to a need to talk about all individual students because we don't want any of our students to be left out of that.
Well, that actually leads into a follow-up that I'm really curious about. So as you're looking at the aggregate data and then drilling down in individual students, what tools are you using to collect and monitor your post-secondary readiness data?
I download a lot of our stuff from obviously Infinite Campus, Kentucky Stats, things along those lines. But on top of that, I'm using Google Sheets to organize and then Google Looker Studio to produce data dashboards that give us the opportunity to look at specific data needed for specific populations. So just as an example for our PLC conversation, within our departments, each of the departments like discuss what specifically they need to see in a data dashboard to have an intentional and meaningful conversation about student success within their contents. And so they all have customized data dashboards that I created based on those conversations and what data was meaningful for them. That way, when they're looking back at that data, they're having that conversations, it's easily available to them. Google Looker Studio is a really wonderful tool. And it's one of my favorite things about it is that if you update one of the sheets that's attached to it, it automatically updates into your dashboard. So if students have or teachers have individual sheets that they keep their own data on, that's automatically going to import into that data dashboard. And so that continuous model where we are constantly building into data, finding more of it, putting every opportunity we have to reflect on that has been really meaningful. Having those data-driven conversations based on the content that's in front of them.
Yeah, it's a very intentional process that she works really, really hard at collecting that data and then making sure that we present it at in different ways to different groups. And we have different layers of, you could think anything from a faculty meeting, an SBDM meeting, all the way down to a content level PLC. And so that Looker Studio and the data that she collects, it really is intentional and it shares where we need to go next. It drives our conversations when we have our extended admin meetings with our counselors, with our college and career coach, with our our Beacon, our Frisky worker. And so we start to talk about individual students in that way, and we're identifying if there's a need and what we can do to fill that need from a wide variety of resources. And so, like I said, we can talk when she pulls up the Looker Studio. We can talk broadly with our faculty. It's not a drill down. It's, hey, do you all see what the data is telling us? What trends are you seeing? What areas are we going in? How's this fit? And then when she goes into our PLCs where she's working specifically with departments, when she's working specifically with counselors, hey, we need to grow this area. Hey, this looks like an area that is really excelling. What are we doing well here? How do we continue to improve upon this? And what are the strategies that they're using that we can apply to other areas as well?
Yeah, each of our departments has specific SMART goals that they're working through this year to enhance their content and their teaching, but all of those SMART goals typically align with that post-secondary goal. And so what they're looking at is ACT supports for supports for their dual credit opportunities and things along those lines. And so when it becomes a target and a focus of one of our departments, I want to make sure that those departments have the data that is up to date and meaningful for them to continue to build in those supports. And so, as everybody knows, when we're in education, you can't wait another year for another round of data to come out. You have to be constantly collecting it in order to make those gains right now. And so a year is too long for us to wait for anything. We're constantly trying that, to do better. And so it requires us to have, alternate data sources. Typically when we're collecting for ACT, you get them whenever they take the ACT, you get them reported back to you. So we built in specific checkpoints with Mastery Prep, which is our data, our ACT data. Our students take those practice tests on there. We're able to pull data from there. And so we're consistently building in more checkpoints for our students to have that data. Within our math department, they specifically do ACT prep, like a 10-question test once a week that builds up time management and test taking skills and things along those lines. And so the focus is across all of our classes and across all of our contents.
Shelby, for those people that are joining us today from other districts, they might want to clone you. So just be careful. The data visualizations and like the information that you provide sounds amazing and so actionable, which is often the barrier, right? Like we have this data, how do we use it? And it sounds like you've taken that next step and provided it at various levels. So that's amazing. And just like, don't be cloned too many times because like you got something special going on there. I'm going to finish up with one more question for you all. I'd love for you to just provide a little bit of insight, for folks that are either with districts joining our call today, or maybe people that are community members or connected to districts in some way, and they want to maybe begin their evaluation of their own post-secondary ecosystem and like, how is it doing to equitably support students? Like, what would you recommend they do to get started on this journey to improve their post-secondary outcomes? I'll start with you, Chad, if that's okay.
Yeah. I would. That's a great question, and that was a part of kind of crafting the vision for our school that we went through last year. I started to see just kind of the different needs for students, and the other part that was really, really impactful was a great partnership of finding the right university and finding the right partner to help guide us and give and take. This is what we can offer, and this is what you all need to make sure that you're working on. And then that commitment of resources once we found out what we needed to do, once we found that right partner. University of Kentucky has been wonderful to us. They have a team, a next gen team that really came out and worked closely with us on crafting our vision, making sure that it was equitable for all of our students, and making sure that we had the right setting and resources to make this partnership impactful. And so your question is, what would be the first thing I would do? And the first thing I would do is make sure that I had the right partners that were going to meet us and work with us and help us grow our program so that all of our students can find some sort of section of dual enrollment that meets what they want. And it does not always have to be, the English and math and science. You can incorporate that vocational. And UK was very welcoming of BCTC because the community college does have a connection with them. So that was just finding that partnership was so impactful.
Thank you for that, Chad. Shelby, what are your thoughts of how a district could get started on their own journey like you all have done?
I think it's really important to build perspective about where you were and how you got to where you are, and continue to question the norms and the typical traditional settings that we have within our educational system. The only way that we are going to be able to break the consistent response and achievement that we've seen is by pushing those limits. And so you want to have like a very clear vision and question every step of your way. I mean, we would not be able to work as successfully as we do if we didn't constantly say, is this something that aligns with our current vision? When we are making all decisions, we have those questions that come into play. And sometimes we do have to like readjust and think back and say, maybe not, so it's questioning the norms and really having that clear vision of what you all want to do.
Wonderful. Thank you, Shelby. And Kayla, how about from your perspective, especially as someone that has worked with multiple districts now, like what would you say is like the first step that some districts should do to get started on this work?
Yeah, I think that anytime you're able to take a step back and really clarify your vision for the district, and create the system that you will then be able to filter opportunities through helps. How will you make decisions about PD? How will you make decisions about partners? How will you make decisions about capacity and finances? And so really building that vision builds coherence across your district and within your school. And without that, you get too many partners and too many initiatives and too many things going on that don't fit together. And so in many ways, I think I'm just reiterating what Chad and Shelby have already said, but saying it just a little differently. Like, I think it's really in a late COVID, post-COVID, wherever we're at in that world where there's so much going on in education to recover and think about how we do school differently and how we prepare students differently. There are so many initiatives. And I really think schools and districts have to get clear on how they say yes and no to things first, to then be able to bring the right people into the spaces to build that mutual accountability and to create that data systems and tracking that really help monitor and create the means for success in breaking the status quo.
Wonderful. Well, Chad and Shelby, first and foremost, thank you so much for what you do for Danville Independent Schools and the students in your community. Your impact can't be measured in many ways because it's so great. So thank you very much for everything you've done. Kayla, thank you so much for bringing your perspective and tying in some of the rubric work and other districts to all this conversation today. It's been so enlightening and really exciting to hear. And thank you, audience, for joining us today. We're really excited that you could stick around and listen and take time out of your very busy schedule to join us.